Okay, welcome back to the Author Speaker Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Siebold, and today we're going to talk about something that changed my business as a professional speaker and author, and it's basically the concept of when it comes to content, when it comes to your expertise, you want to be an inch wide and a mile deep. Most speakers, I will say this. I mean, I've been in this business a long time, 25 years, as most of you know. And I hate to say this, but it's really true. In terms of motivational speakers, most speakers, they're the opposite. They're an inch deep and a mile wide, which basically means they got a 45-minute speech. I mean, I can tell you, I know so many people that are very successful speakers. I mean, they're out there all the time. They're on the road 300 days a year, and they got a 45-minute speech in a book that's 10 pages thick because they don't really have any content. And that's fine. I mean, if that's what you want to do, if you just want to bop around doing motivational speeches and there's no real depth to your message, you just kind of, pop in and pop out. I used to make fun of my old friend and late friend, Keith Harrell, who was, for about 10 years, a top motivational speaker, the busiest in corporate America, but there's no question about that. For about 10 years until he died very suddenly. About, that was 5-6 years ago, Keith died. Maybe it was a little bit longer than that now. It's gone so long. But Keith was an amazing keynote speaker. Mr. Attitude is everything. Attitude is everything. He's a big, tall, black guy, and I used to make fun of him the way he spoke. His attitude is everything. And I said, you black guys got the rhythm, baby. We used to make fun of each other. And we did it on stage several times together in seminars where I would do a mental toughness seminar, and he would come in and he would do some speaking with me at the seminar. And we used to have fun doing that. He was a very good sport about it. We used to have a lot of fun. And Keith is a really smart guy. Matter of fact, he was so smart that he could have been an inch wide and a mile and a half deep. I mean, he was really a bright guy, but he just didn't want to do I don't want to say he didn't want to do the work because he worked really hard. All he did was travel and speak. But he just didn't, I don't know, for whatever reason, he didn't want to put the time into developing a lot of content. He liked to do his 45 minutes and get on a plane and go somewhere else. The guy had 3 homes, Florida, Arizona, and Atlanta. And I was in all 3 at some point because we were business partners for 10 years. And Keith would do a front-end keynote. Then he'd say, you got to get a coach. My coach is Steve Siebold. He's the best mental toughness coach in the country. And and you got to call Steve. He should be coaching your whole sales team. And we did millions and millions and millions of dollars together over 10 years because we'd come in and do, he'd do a speech and we'd do a 3-year contract. And then we paid Keith on the back end for the referral. And we just had a phenomenal partnership. Never had a contract. We should have. We talked about it. I mean, I guess maybe in the early days, now that I'm looking back, maybe we wrote something up. I was never notarized or anything like that because we knew we trusted each other and we did business together. We exchanged, like I said, we did millions of dollars in business, exchanged a lot of money, and we never had an issue. Never had an issue. Matter of fact, we were trying to do a deal in Europe together. And the last time I had talked to him, I came back and he was gone. Just crazy how sometimes, life can be so short. He had surgery and he didn't make it out. And it was just a routine surgery and he was gone. And I just couldn't believe it. But anyway, another story. But he didn't want to be deep. In other words, an inch wide, I should explain this, I guess, if you don't know what I'm talking about. If you're in the business, you probably understand this, but if you're new, you may not have heard this. You will hear it down the road. Inch wide and a mile deep basically is saying you're in a niche market and you're so deep in the market, you're so deep in your expertise that you know everything about that topic. And that's what I've been for years. I've been an inch wide and mile deep. I talk about mental toughness. The only reason I talk about being an author speaker is I've been an author speaker for 25 years, so I know a lot about it. I've sold almost a couple million, almost 2 million books, and given, $16 million in keynote speeches and tens of millions of dollars in trainings, and training sessions for big companies, that kind of thing. So I know a fair amount about this business, because I've been doing it so long. But my actual trade expertise, if you will, is mental toughness. It's the only thing I've ever talked about. I just talk about, like I said, the speaking business because that's the business I'm in, and so. So I know something about it just from being in it for so long, but and being moderately successful at it, whatever wherever we quantify that. But mental toughness. And I think if there's anything in mental toughness haven't heard of, I'd be surprised because I've studied with coaches, Olympic, professional sports coaches, psychology professors, psychiatrists, psychological researchers, you pretty much name it. And over all these years, because I've been studying sports psychology and psychology, performance psychology, for roughly almost 40 years now. Before I ever made a dime doing it, I was studying it. I studied it for probably 15 years before I ever made a dime. And probably 20 years before I made a living talking about it. So I've been very interested in the topic for a long time. That's it. I don't know anything about anything else. I really don't, except the speaking business and writing books and that business of that, because like I said, I've been in it for so long. But that's an inch wide and a mile deep. So if you got a question about performance psychology, odds are I've heard it before, and I've heard the answers, multiple answers and all that. So that really helps me, because that's why I've written 12 books on the topic, because I know a lot about it. Whereas a lot of speakers, again, that's why their books are so thin. You ever notice how keynote speakers' books, a lot of times, not all the time, a lot of times their books are tiny. They're like pamphlets. They don't have any other content. They don't know anything about it. They don't know much. They're just rah, rah, shish, kumbah. And again, if you want to do that, God bless you. There's nothing wrong with it. I used to make fun of Keith, like I said all the time. I'd say, Keith, you're one of the smartest people I ever met in my life. And he said, I appreciate that. He goes, I just don't want to dig in. I just want to tell people attitude is everything. I want to pump them up to go to the next session at the convention, and I'm out, baby. And you can take care of all the rest. And, of course, Keith would do a speech and make $25,000, and we'd go in and do a 3-year contract and make $1 million. Of course, he got paid quite a bit of it as well. So he was pretty smart in that way. But, the money is in being an expert and not a mouthpiece. Before we got into business with Keith, we had a meeting down in Florida, and I said to him, Keith, I said, the bigger money, the business side of the speaking business is in the back end. It's not the front end. It's not the speech. It's the back end. It's what you sell after the speech. He said, I know, I just don't want to do it. I said, what you have is a great job. It's not a business. It's a great job. He goes, no, I know. And he was a very skilled business guy. He just didn't really have a business. He just ran around giving speeches. And there's a lot of people that do that. And that's fine. Again, if you want to do that, fine. But I would encourage you, for multiple reasons, to be deep in your topic. Even if you just do keynotes and that's all you do is 45 minutes and that's the extent of your knowledge, I get that side of it. I've recently, in the last couple of years, written a book called How Money Works. It's a very, very successful book. It's sold almost 600,000 copies in the last 2 years. It's very popular. I've been on 235 TV shows for it since it came out in 2020. And, it's been extremely successful. But I am not a money expert. I mean, I know more about money than most people do, obviously, but I'm not a financial planner. I make recommendations to people on a very simple scale in terms of saving, investing, those kinds of things. If you want to know how to trade derivatives on Wall Street, I am not your man. I don't know how to do it. I don't want to know how to do it. So I know what it's like to have 45 minutes of content. Like I run this little class called the How Money Works Enterprise class. That myself, my co-author, and Andy Horner, another gentleman that did worked on the project with us. He's really a third co-author for all intents and purposes. But so they put that together. We put a whole class, and it's an hour long. And people ask me to do 6 hours on money. I don't know if I'd be able to do it, because I really just talk about the basics, and but now when it comes to mental toughness, I can talk for 45 hours straight if I could stay awake, no question. The audience could stay awake because I know more about it. I really believe if you're going to speak about something or write about something, you're going to be an author speaker for the rest of your life, you want to go deep. I would not be an expert in 5 different things, a lot of speakers, well, I shouldn't say a lot of speakers that approach us, come to the Bill Gove Speech Workshop, have been in seminars I've done for National Speakers Association over the years. They'll say, well, I've got 5 different topics. And the reason I do it is because it gives me 5 times the chance of getting hired as a speaker. That's not, in the linear world, that would be true. It's not true at all. Okay, in the speaking business, because they know if you talk about 5 things, you can't be an expert, with the possible exception of my old dear friend, Brian Tracy. Brian Tracy, and I've said this to Brian in front of him and on stage and audiences just because it cracks me up and it cracks him up. He's not a human being. He's a machine. Brian Tracy is an android. I'm pretty convinced he's like the Terminator. He actually is like the Terminator. He's like Arnold. He lives out there by Arnold too in Solana Beach, California. He lives in a beautiful place overlooking the ocean. It's amazing. Brian is not human. He can talk about 22 different topics, and Brian knows a lot about 22 different topics. I mean, he really does. Like, he's an anomaly. There's only one Brian Tracy. There'll never be another Brian Tracy. He is not human. He doesn't have, as I said in Vegas one time when Brian and I and Jim Cathcart and Don Hudson and a bunch of us were working Vegas one time. I forget where we were on the Strip, but somewhere on the Strip. I forget. It doesn't matter. But we had thousands of people in the audience. And I was up before Brian, and Brian was in the front row. And I said, Brian, but Brian was the biggest name in the room. And so I was referencing him as a technique we do in that stage technique to get the audience's attention. And so I said, Brian Tracy's here. And I'll clap. I said, he's a great guy. He's been on my board for 20 years. Great guy, fantastic author. He's written more books than I've read. And I said, but be clear. Let's be clear. Brian doesn't have blood pumping through his veins. It's antifreeze. He is an android. He's a machine. Nobody can write that many books and give that many speeches and actually have expertise on that many topics. It's impossible. It's never been done before except by Brian Tracy, which makes him a non-human. And so Brian laughed and we hit around and stuff. But Brian is very talented. There's no question. He's a super talented guy. And the only thing Brian does every time I talk to him over the years is he read. I talked to him one time in his office. I said, this is him and I. It's not on stage. There's no audience, no microphone, no camera. I said, well, how much do you actually read during the day? No, the real answer. And he goes, yeah, 4 or 5 hours a day. I go, you read 4 or 5 hours a day? I mean, really, like you're sitting down and reading 4 or 5 hours a day? He said, yeah, I read 4 or 5 hours a day. I'm like, no wonder. Holy smokes. He goes, how do you write if you don't read that much? I go, Brian, nobody has 4 or 5 hours a day to write. To read that runs a business, but he does it. And he's a machine. He's amazing. And he is great at it. No question. And I think people here see what Brian's done. I honestly believe there'll never be another Brian Tracy in the speaking business because he is an anomaly. He is very, very gifted at that. He's very disciplined in his research and all that. And that's why his books are so good. If he's not the best writer in our business, he's one of them. And I've said that to him. I've said it on stage. I wish I was as good as Brian as a writer. He just delivers. And I've learned a lot from reading his books and talking to him and getting coaching from him over the years about being concise and succinct as a writer. As a matter of fact, I recommend read everything Brian Tracy writes because he knows how to write. He knows how to get to the point in as few words as possible and deliver. The guy's an animal. Anyway, I'm not doing a Brian Tracy commercial, but he is an anomaly and he is phenomenal and he's great. And, he's like Tony Robbins in another way. There's only going to be one. There's only one Zig Ziglar. There was only one Bill Gove. There was only one Larry Wilson. There was only one Jeannie Robertson. There's only one Don Hudson. These people, they're one-offs. So you can't base your career, I don't think, on these one-off stars. Because they're just, Tom Brady. How many Tom Bradys do you think they're going to be in football? I don't think too many. So you don't want to base it on some anomaly. You want to base it on more of a majority of what to do. And so I would go an inch wide and a mile deep. Take your topic, choose one topic, not 2, not 3, 1. And study it, become an expert in it, do all the research, do proprietary research like we've talked about before, read books, go to seminars, learn from people. I don't care if you've been doing it for a long time. I still study other people, mostly psychologists, when it comes to mental toughness. Most of the time, they're talking about things I already know. Some are a lot younger than me, so I'm a lot farther ahead than them. But once in a while, I pick things up, and I think that's fantastic. I think the growth mindset with Carol Dweck wrote her book and talked about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And that became, a million-copy bestseller. I forget the name of the book. But it's a phenomenal concept I never considered before. Fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Sometimes you'll read and you'll go, that's brilliant. Now, how can I put a different spin on that in my book or my speech or whatever? And I did, and other people have as well. So you can learn like crazy. But if you got one thing to dive in on, dive in deep. So you don't ever get accused of being a lightweight. I've never been accused of being a lightweight in mental toughness. Oh, I'm a lightweight in damn near everything else, but I don't make a living in anything else. I'm not a lightweight in the speaking business in terms of my knowledge of the business and the writing business, I don't think. But in non-mental toughness is a topic. But in everything else, yeah, probably, because I've never really taken a deep dive in anything outside of playing tennis and understanding that game. But that's about it. So you don't need to be. That's why I got paid for all these years, is being an expert. So that means when you're an inch wide to a mile deep, and I'll wrap up the episode on this, because I could talk about this for 3 days, but it's not really necessary to talk about for 3 days. So I'll wrap it up this way. When you're an inch wide and a mile deep, you can write, speak, deliver anything on that topic. I mean, that's why I've got seminars, I've got workshops, I've got all these books. I'm probably going to write another, 10 or 12 books, 15 books. I've written 12. I can write because I've studied it so long. You can do the same exact thing. It gives you options you can't get as a lightweight. If you got a 45-minute speech on a topic, or you're saying, rah, rah, shish, kumbah, go get 'em, tiger. You have a positive attitude, be big, think big and you'll be big. What you think about is what you become. All those things are wonderful. They're just really light. They're fourth grade messages. And we need to all be reminded of those messages. But what else, if that's all you got as content, what else are you going to say? You're talking to smart people paying you a lot of money to speak or write. What are you going to tell them that they haven't already heard before if that's all you got? You got to go deep in the well. Dig deep. As my old friend Harvey McKay would talk about, dig deep, man. Dig that well. Go down deep, study. And if you don't enjoy the topic, get another topic. I've always enjoyed mental toughness. It's been a great topic for me. All the things that's critical thinking has been phenomenal. It's put me in front of some of the biggest companies in the world with critical thinking sessions with some of the people that I'm not even in the same ballpark in terms of experience or intelligence or education for that matter. But I have this expertise in critical thinking because of studying mental toughness. And I'm able to bring something to the table that otherwise I wouldn't even be in that room because I wouldn't be qualified to be in that room, So dig deep and see if it doesn't make a difference. I know this is not the easiest thing, but if you enjoy the topic, you'll enjoy the process of, digging deep and being an inch wide and a mile deep, as opposed to a lightweight. Again, sorry if I offend any of the motivational speakers. You can be a motivational speaker, just don't be a motivational speaker lightweight. Study your topic, dig in deep, whether it's motivation or it's inspiration or whatever. Expand on that topic so you can write books. So you don't have a pamphlet-looking book and people go, well, yeah, that's all they are. You're a cheerleader, basically. You're a good cheerleader. And that's fine, I guess, if that's what you want to be, but it doesn't give you a lot of options when it comes to building a business. What you have is a job running around, talking on stage for 45 minutes, and everyone knows you don't have anything else because you don't have anything else to say because you haven't studied it enough. My late friend Bob Proctor, God bless him, man. The guy dropped out of school in like 8th grade, but he studied all these books and he studied all these people. And the guy, died just a few months ago. He died a very well-educated man, not formally educated at all, hardly. He'd be the first person to tell you that, but he was self-educated. And that's, I think, beyond any formal education because you can make it specific to what you need to know. Specific information is far more valuable in the marketplace than general information. I think we all know that. School gives you general information. Self-study gives you specific information that you can sell back to the marketplace to solve problems. So anyway, I won't belabor this, but think about it, okay? Go deep, decide on your topic, and make it happen. And again, you got a lot of places you can listen to these podcasts. They're all free. I know that. But I appreciate you guys listening. Make sure you subscribe at authorspeakerpodcast.org. authorspeakerpodcast.org. Subscribe. We'll send you an email about the new episode every week. And I look forward to talking with you next time. Take care.